আমাদের আজকের ক্লাসের আলোচনার বিষয়বস্তু উইলিয়াম শেক্সপিয়ারের সনেট 18। অ্যাকচুয়ালি সনেটগুলোর সেভাবে কোনো নামকরণ হয় না। যত সনেট আমরা দেখতে পাই ইংরাজিতে বা বাংলাতেও, সনেটের সেইভাবে কোনো টাইটেল হয় না। সনেট নাম্বার দিয়েই বলা হয়, আর প্রথম লাইনটা সনেটের নামকরণ হিসেবে ধরা যেতে পারে। Before discussing the theme, structure, literary devices, etc., we should first learn something about Shakespearean sonnet. Last year in our class 11th standard, we learned what a sonnet is, reading the very first poem, probably Upon Mr. Beach. Probably it was a sonnet, and there we came to learn that Italian sonnet or Petrarchan sonnet, the 14 lines of an Italian or Petrarchan sonnet is divided into two distinct parts. The first part comprises 8 lines and the next part comprises 6 lines. The first part is called octave and the second part is called sestet. We have learnt this from previous year's poem, but we have to keep in mind that many English sonnetiers too practiced writing sonnets following Italian or Petrarchan form, but its language may be English, but these sonnets cannot be termed as English sonnets. First of all, we have to keep in mind this clear, distinct information. When we hear the term English sonnets, then first of all, the very name that appears before our eyes is William Shakespeare. That is, William Shakespeare developed a new style of sonnet writing that is called Shakespearean sonnet. But actually, Shakespearean sonnet itself is the other name of English sonnet. What is the structural difference between Italian sonnets and Shakespearean or English sonnets? Very clear difference. In Italian sonnet pattern, we can see that the entire 14 lines are divided into two distinct parts. First part is octave, consisting of 8 lines, and the second part is sestet, consisting of 6 lines. And in between these two parts, that is between octave and sestet, there lies a gap. That gap is also structural gap. That gap is called caesura. That gap is called structurally caesura. But in Shakespearean sonnet, we can see the entire 14 lines of the sonnet are divided into 4 parts. First 3 parts are called 3 quatrains. A quatrain consists of 4 lines. Now, what is a quatrain? Quatrain is a verse consisting of 4 lines with a special rhyme scheme. So, Shakespearean sonnet is divided into 4 parts. 3 quatrains, that is 12 lines, 4 lines each quatrain, so 12 lines, and at the end a couplet of 2 lines. It is called couplet. Why it is called couplet? It is called couplet because just see, look at the end of the sonnet. This couplet is rhymed, regularly rhymed. This couplet is regularly rhymed. So what is the rhyme scheme of Shakespearean pattern? The rhyme scheme of Shakespearean pattern is clearly, just see and just make the rhythmic sound with me. A, B, right? You see the poem end of the first quatrain of Shakespearean sonnet always ends with this rhyme A, B. You see, day, temperate, May, tet. So A, B. What is the rhyme scheme of second quatrain? The rhyme scheme of second quatrain hold another pronunciation, another 2 pronunciations. What is that? We can say distinctly C, D, right? Signs, dipped, declines, untrimmed. So C, D. Another thing you have to keep in mind and you have to follow. That is the first rhyme is flat and open, and the second rhyme is closed. Once again, see, day. It's an open rhyme, but temperate. It's a closed rhyme. Main, open rhyme, but closed rhyme. Similarly, the same rhythm, same rhythmical sound continues. It is the function of sound. This rhyming is nothing but a function of sound. This same continues, same rhythm continues. Signs, a flat, open sound, but dimmed. When properly pronounced, dimmed. CD, declines, open, flat, and untrimmed, closed, making a regular sound pattern. This is the purpose of our regular rhyme scheme. Third quatrain, rhyme scheme of third quatrain, we follow another 2 new sounds, 2 new vowel sounds. What is that? Fet, ost, set, grost. That is A, B, C, D, E, F. And now let us come to the concluding part of the sonnet, that is couplet ending with the rhymed scheme. What is rhymed? G, G, C, D, E. So it is G. So it is very easy to keep in mind Shakespearean rhyme scheme. What is that? A, B, right? C, D, E, F, G. This is the structural pattern of Shakespearean sonnet, carrying the clear difference with the sonnet of Petrarch or Italian pattern. Very distinct. The difference is, and it's a question. It's an SAQ question. Write the difference between the Petrarchan sonnet and the Shakespearean sonnet. We can write easily. This was the first part of the poem discussion, that is the structure, etc., rhyme scheme analysis, etc. Now let us come to the second part, that is the very substance and central theme of the poem. Completely discussing this part, we will enter into the line by line discussion. Then will come other structural things, poetic device, literary devices, purpose, etc., historical background, etc. That will come later. Now the second part, let us discuss the substance and theme and central idea, if any, of the poem. Now, before I start discussing the substance and other thing in the second part, let me come back for some time into the first part discussion once again. Let me hear from you attending the class today what I have discussed previously about the structural pattern and rhyme scheme of the Shakespearean sonnet. I would like to ask Purvasha first. Purvasha, tell in its entirety the briefly what I have discussed previous part. Purvasha. Purvasha, are you online? Purvasha? Probably Purvasha is detached because of some reasons. Okay. Maybe. Purvasha left. Anyway. Sushmita, not Sushmita, Sneha. Sneha, you tell what you have just understood from my first part discussion. You tell the structural pattern and rhyme scheme.
Sir, in your first part discussion, we came to know that in our this poem, in first stanza, we came to know about the rhyme scheme that is AB, because we see in the first line that there is A. And similarly, there is in the third line there is May. So we found that the rhyme scheme is AB, and the second stanza similarly we find that that is CP. And in third stanza, we find the rhyme scheme is EF, and in the last part of this poem, we find the rhyme scheme that is GG. Because last stanza we find C and D, and C and D. So the rhyme scheme is G and T. As this is a Shakespearean sonnet, we find this rhyme scheme.
And about the poetic structure, that is the structure of the poem, the entire 40 lines are divided into 4 parts. So you have to mention
4 parts.
That is three quatrains and 1 couplet. Carrying different rhyme scheme. Clear? Everyone clear? If you have any question regarding the structural pattern of the sonnet, then ask me. I'm sitting here, video is on, I will tell right this time. But I believe that you have to keep in mind very brief discussion. I have told elaborately, but you have to keep in mind, you have to carry with you very brief discussion. That is, this is Shakespearean sonnet. Its pattern is 3 quatrains, 1 couplet, and carrying different rhyme scheme. Almost all the sonnets of Shakespeare carry this rhyme scheme: A B C D E F G. This is. Anyway, now let us start discussing the poem itself. It was the structural pattern. Now the poem itself. What the poem is about. We are eager to know what the sonnet is about. Now, of Shakespeare's 154 sonnets, this particular sonnet is one of the most beautiful and most loved sonnets and most widely read sonnets. Apparently, it may seem that Shakespeare devotes this sonnet to his lady love, because actually the poets do this thing. That is, whenever they think of any beauty, whenever they think of any lofty matter, heavenly matter, they devote that thing to their lady loves. But in Shakespeare, we find a special treatment. In the hand of Shakespeare, we find a special treatment. Shakespeare has not devoted this sonnet to his lady love. This sonnet is completely devoted to a man friend, to a boyfriend. That is not a woman, to a man. This is. Now, who this man was, whom Shakespeare devoted this sonnet? What was his historical background? What was his relationship with Shakespeare? That is another thing. That is not the matter of discussion of this sonnet. That is another thing. That is historical thing. We will discuss later. But now let us come back to the poem. Actually, in this sonnet, Shakespeare has eternalized human beauty. Shakespeare believes that all natural beauty, all fair, all beautiful things are very, very transient. All beauties, natural beauties appear for momentary period of time. But human beauty is eternal. That is, we can say Shakespeare has sung the song of immortality of beauty. This is the first cream of the sonnet. What has Shakespeare done through this sonnet? Shakespeare has sung the song of immortality of human beauty. Some critics and some readers are used to saying that Shakespeare has glorified the beauty of his man friend, male friend. But I would not like to address the poem in such fashion. I would like to say that Shakespeare has celebrated human beauty, but that human beauty which is full of poetic beauty. If a human being is full of poetry, then his beauty is immortal. Now let us come back to the main points of the poem. So, briefly to tell, Shakespeare has celebrated the immortality of beauty of his friend. Now his friend is none but a human being. So we can say Shakespeare has sung the song of immortality of beauty. I will discuss in Bengali later, but when we are discussing in English, let us continue to discuss in English, because you have to write in English. So once again, let me repeat the same thing as I have just uttered. What is the essence of the sonnet of this sonnet 18? The essence of sonnet 18 is this, that Shakespeare has glorified beauty. Shakespeare has sung the song, immortal song of beauty. Shakespeare has eternalized beauty. Which beauty now we have to understand? Because natural beauties are subject to death and decay. But some beauties are there which never die. Which are those beauties? Let us learn from the poem. The poem begins with an interrogative sentence, but actually through this interrogative sentence, Shakespeare actually asserts his assertive sentence. What is the beginning? First quatrain, first line. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thee means you, archaic use. Thee means you. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? That is, the poet does not want to compare thee, whom he is addressing, his friend, a male friend. He does not wish to compare his friend with a summer's day. Now, first of all, we have to understand what is a summer's day. What does Shakespeare mean by a summer's day? Actually, by a summer's day, Shakespeare means a beautiful day. In a word, something beautiful. Summer's beauty. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Clearly meaning, I shall not compare you to summer's beauty. Why? The poet discusses later. But let us think, let us tell why. Why does not the poet want to compare his friend's beauty with the beauty of a summer day? It is very natural that the beauty of a summer's day comes for momentary period of time, isn't it? A beautiful summer afternoon, a beautiful summer evening, a beautiful summer morning, a beautiful summer night will stay but for a little while. So, the beauty which stays and exists for a little while, how can Shakespeare, who is going to glorify human beauty in his sonnet, how can this poet compare the beauty of his friend with this transient beauty? Understand? 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 If not, then ask me. Ask me in broken English. I will tell in, I will tell in prepared English. You ask me in broken English, no problem. Once again, repeat. Poetry discussion is not a matter of hurrying. It cannot be done in haste. It should be done slowly, in a very clear process. In the first line, it apparently means that the poet has raised a question, but this question does not demand any answer. So, questions are of many types. Some questions are there which demand answers, that is called question. But some questions are there what is nothing but an assertive expression of the questioner. That cannot be question. So, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? It is an interrogative sentence, but it cannot be a question. It is not a question. It is assertion of belief. It is assertion of expression which is full of belief. What is that belief? No, I shall not compare thee to a summer's day, because the poet will discuss now. But we think and we tell, because Shakespeare cannot compare the beauty of his friend to the beauty of a transient summer day, because he believes that his friend's beauty is eternal and he is going to glorify that eternal beauty of his friend. So how can he compare? He cannot compare. Now he himself, the poet himself tells the reason why he fails to compare, why he will not compare. He himself is telling why he will not compare, because thou art more lovely and more temperate. Thou art is equal to you are. You, I cannot compare. I shall not compare because you are more lovely and more temperate. Lovely means beautiful. Temperate means controlled. Temperate means controlled. Temperate means mild. You are not ultra beauty. You are mild beauty, and those which are mild will last long. Those which are, which appear with ultra something will lose their beauty very quickly. As a natural perfume exists for lot of time, but an unnatural man-made perfume will last for some moments and fade. This happens. So, thou art more lovely and more temperate. So, there is no comparison between your beauty and the beauty of a summer's day. That's why I fail to compare. That's why I shall not compare. Third line. What happens in summer day? Rough winds do shake the darling birds of May. We are experienced with the arrival of sudden rough winds on a summer day. Now and then, again and again, just fading the bright beauty of a summer morning. Suddenly some rough winds appear from somewhere and do what? And unknowingly, unknown to the plants, unknown to the flower plants, these rough winds shake the very sweet birds, flower birds, beauteous. Bird means kuri, fuller kuri. So this happens in a summer day. This happen anytime. This may happen, but your beauty cannot be shaken so easily. Your beauty cannot be shaken so easily. Summer's beauty is shaken again and again. By what? By rough winds. But your beauty cannot be shaken, so I cannot compare your beauty with the beauty of summer's day, of a summer's day. Another thing happens on a summer day. What's that? And summer's lease hath all too short a date. Right here, you yourself, right here, I'm telling, giving the direction. Lease means duration, right? LEAC, lease means duration. DURATION. Lease means duration. Hath means has. Too short a date means transient existence. Transient, TRANSIENT. Transient existence. Transient existence. So what we get from this line? What we get from this line? And summer's lease, that is summer's duration. Here the word summer stands for beauty. Right yourself, no problem. Summer stands for beauty. That is beauty's duration. hath means has. All too short a date means very transient existence, means momentary existence. Understand the meaning? You understand very well? Well, now at the end of the first quatrain, let us summarize in very brief, simple English. What we get at the end of the first quatrain, I shall tell, but before that, I would like to hear from the class. I would like to hear, Ankon is sitting here. Let me ask him. Ankita is also sitting. Sneha, you are appearing very distinctly. Navanita, you are appearing very distinctly. Oh, okay, you tell. What we get summarily, if you are now asked to write the very, story behind the first stanza, then what you will write? You tell in brief English.
I came to know that the poet compares his friend's beauty, does not compare his friend's beauty to a summer's day.
That is to a beautiful day of a summer.
To a beautiful day of a summer. His friend's beauty is his friend's beauty is cannot be told in words.
He cannot compare because you have to write yourself in examination. Sonamani, you tell, why does not the poet compare his friend's beauty to a summer's day? Cannot.
compare his friend's beauty with the summer's day because his friend's beauty is
Because his friend's beauty is
because he cannot say his friend's beauty in word.
what happens to the beauty of summer's day? We have to mention this. What happens to the beauty of a summer's day?
In summer's day, the rough wind.
Hmm.
The rough wind shake the turning
On a summer day, rough winds appear suddenly from somewhere and destroy the sweet buds of flowers. That is, a summer day cannot hold its beauty. This is one thing. So, summer's beauty lasts, lasts for a short while. But the poet believes that his friend's beauty is not so transient. Transient means ক্ষণস্থায়ী. He believes that his friend's beauty is not so transient. That's why he cannot compare his friend's beauty to a summer's day. Sneha, you tell briefly what you have understood from the first stanza. Sneha, speaker on. Sneha, speaker on.
In the first stanza, I understand that the poet does not want to compare his companion with summer's day, and he tells us that his companion is more lovely than any summer's scene and any temperate.
You have to mention what happens on a summer day. What happens on a summer day you have to mention. তোমাকে বলতে হবে সামার ডে কি হয়, যার জন্য এটা তিনি এই কম্পারিজনটা করবেন না।
Summers.
I am telling again and again that on a summer day, rough winds appear from somewhere and destroy the sweet buds of flowers. Sweet buds of flowers are nothing but symbol of beauty. That is, in a word, on a summer's day, rough winds do arrive from somewhere unknowingly and destroy the beauty of the day. So it is very, very clear that summer's beauty is transient. But to the poet, his friend's beauty is not transient. In this very sonnet, he is actually going to sing the song of immortality of the beauty of his friend. So how can he compare his friend's beauty to a summer's day? Okay, this is a very, I must not use the word tough, but this is a very nice poem worthy of in-depth reading. That's why let us stop here reading the very first quatrain. Next day we will read the later part. Okay, because if I today continue reading the other two quatrains and the couplet, it will take a lot of time. That may cause your fatigue. I don't want that, and we have to understand the poem very well, entering deep inside the poem. So let us stop here. Next day we will read once again, and then we will discuss one thing. Next day at the very beginning of the class we will read the poem, then the other activities will be carried on. Okay, thank you very much. Wait for next.